Mentally, I had prepared for this huge celebratory moment, thinking the pressure would be off and I'd feel the relief of having made it. Imagine my surprise when, instead, I found myself avoiding a celebration and wanting to throw myself into more work. I knew enough about mindset to get curious about what was really going on. I forced myself to slow down enough to feel my feelings, and what I felt was anxious and unsettled. My mind immediately wanted to know whether or not we could do it again the next month and the next. Hello, my loves. I am so excited to be recording this episode because I'm sharing what feels like really monumental news. And of course, for those of you who've been listening to the podcast for a while, you will have heard me talk about this every now and then. Of course, I've given you a little status update, but I'm finally ready to make a big announcement. So stick with me. You're going to want to hear this, especially if you're an entrepreneur, a creative, a visionary, someone who has a big idea, who wants to make an incredible impact on the world. This episode is going to be for you. If you're new here, hi, I'm Emily June Wilcox. I am the host of this Top 2% Global podcast. I am a business and wealth coach. I'm a multi-7-figure business owner. I'm the creator of the Money Wound Medicine program, and it is my mission to help people heal their money wounds, make more money in their business, turn more of that profit into passive income and generational legacy wealth. So that is my mission. That's why I'm here. Thank you so much for tuning in. And I am so thrilled to be announcing that my book is officially being published in less than 1 month. So the publish date is Tuesday, September 24th. Wow. It feels like such finish line energy. And of course, there's been so much that has gone into this. So I'm going to share a little bit of the behind the scenes, and then I'm going to read you an excerpt from the book, and I'm going to tell you what you can do to make sure that you get early first access, not only to the book, but to special discounts and special bonuses as soon as the book comes out. So I also want to hear your questions. So I'm sure that I'll be leaving some things out of this episode. And I was just recently on my friend Roxy's podcast, and she was asking me so many things about this book writing journey. Because I think for many entrepreneurs, there is a feeling that like a book is eventually a part of this, or you want to write a book, or you've had a book on your mind for a long time, or you're wondering like how a book could be part of your marketing strategy, part of your way of impacting more people. And so I would love to answer any questions just about my journey. Of course, it's just one person's experience, but I do think that I have a unique perspective, and that the way that I've done it has been so in alignment with me and the way that I work that it made it feel much more effortless than it otherwise would have. Because let's face it, I think for most of us, the idea of writing and publishing a book feels daunting AF. It's not in our wheelhouse. It's not something where we have a lot of understanding and expertise in that industry. And unfortunately, there's a lot of predatory behavior out there as well. So I have a friend who published her book. She self-published, but she did pay someone basically a $30,000 package. And I'm not sure all what was included, but essentially, I think they were like getting the book all set up. They did it through Ingram Spark, which I can talk about later, and, guaranteed to get her book in, on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, amazon.ca, yada, 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 guaranteed bestseller badge. And she just feels like she kind of like flushed 30 grand down the toilet. There were just so many empty promises and so many snags that she hit during the launch. And this story is not uncommon. And if you talk on social media about your book or that you're writing a book or that you want to write a book, I promise you, you will have a lot of people in your DMs messaging you saying like, hey, how can I help? Here's what I do. I'm a publicist. I get people TV spots. I help people write their book. I guarantee bestseller badges, yada, yada, yada. And not to say that maybe some of those practitioners aren't amazing and providing an incredible service, but I will tell you where I've spent my money so far in writing this book and the things that I chose to do on my own or to keep in-house, so to speak. So ultimately, I would not say that writing is my favorite medium. It's definitely talking. Like being on this microphone, speaking directly to you, that is what's so much easier and more natural for me. I'm a manifesting generator in human design. I have a defined throat chakra. I'm really meant to be using my voice and sharing my truth in this medium, and this feels much easier. That said, I started having an intuitive knowing last year that a book was really meant to be a part of this mission of helping people heal their money wounds and call in more wealth. And so I'm one to listen to my higher self and listen to the nudges from the universe. And so I was willing. I'm like, okay, if a book is meant to come through me, like I am willing. That said, it started out as kind of a nudge, and that sort of inner knowing grew a little louder, and I started kind of talking about it. That was like my first step with almost getting myself used to the idea that it was going to happen. But then I actually needed to take some tangible steps. I needed to clear some time on my calendar to actually make it happen. And the examples that I had of people who were writers or who wrote books looked very different than what sounded good to me. So the examples that I knew were people who wrote like all day, every day. And that to me sounded terrible. It was like, if that's what I have to do to write a book, I can't imagine myself actually writing the book. But I listened to an audiobook of 10x is easier than 2x. And one of the things they talk about in that book is a maker's schedule and really how important it is to have time protected for this deep creative work. And that really resonated with me. And so what I did is I started changing my calendar, changing the way that clients could book coaching calls, podcast interviews, etc., so that each day had a theme, and it was like is with like. It's very clear and obvious what the objective is of each day. And Tuesdays were blocked for writing my book. And it wasn't perfect. I'm not going to say I never, ever, ever let anything on my calendar on a Tuesday, but I really tried to protect it, because when you're in that process, even just the thought of like, oh wait, what time is it? Because I know I have a call later today, can really take you back out of it. But for me, I would say that on those Tuesdays, it was probably about 4 hours of solid writing. It would take me a little bit to get into it. And then after about 4 hours, I was pretty much toast, and my brain would feel like mush. And even if I like wanted to continue, I probably couldn't. So essentially I wrote about 4 hours a week. That was really it. It was rare, if not a never thing, that I would write in addition to my Tuesdays. Occasionally, maybe if I had something like a commitment to my kids or whatever that really like made it so I couldn't write on that Tuesday at all, then I potentially would try to sneak in some writing time at other points in the week. But again, that was a pretty rare occurrence. And so that was kind of my motivation to really honor the time block on Tuesdays, because it was like, well, if that doesn't happen, then I didn't write at all this week. And I wanted to kind of stay on a timeline. It wasn't like I had this really hard and fast, here's when the book is going to be done, but I knew I didn't want this project to drag on forever either. So I wrote for about 4 hours a week, just on Tuesdays. I started in July of 2023. And by May of 2024, I had my book out to beta readers. And so I would say at that point, it was already like 90%. I had already been working with my sister, who's an incredible developmental editor. So, when we talk about what to spend your money on, that was a very worthwhile investment. Not someone who will just change the tense of a verb here and there and take $78 and spell it out instead of having the numbers. Like, to me, that little nitpicky stuff, I could almost care less. I mean, obviously I want the verb tenses to be correct and I want it to be easy for the reader, but hiring a developmental editor who can actually look at your manuscript with fresh eyes through the lens of the reader and help just reorganize the material and connect it together so that it really takes the reader on a journey, and on a journey that makes sense and that really leads them through the transformation or through the experience that they're meant to have from the book, is so critical. And she specializes in, nonfiction style of writing, which I think is important too. So that's absolutely where I would put my money as a non-negotiable. And for me, it didn't feel like there was like tons and tons and tons that needed to be changed. Like, to be honest, if I hadn't worked with her and I'd published my book, it's still something that I would have been proud of. But the book is much better because I hired her. And there were things that she caught that I was just too close to even notice, where she'd be like, okay, well, in these 3 chapters, we're using this format, but then in these other 3, we're not. And let's make it consistent for the reader so that they know what to expect. And what if we moved this here and we pulled this here and then now it's consistent? And if I said yes, then she would just do it, which was so nice. It wasn't like it was handed back to me. It never felt like it was more work on my plate. It felt like she was taking work off of my plate. So that was pretty incredible. And we'll share her link in the show notes. Her business is called allinclusiveediting.com, and her name is Beth. What else do I want to share about this? Yeah, so it took me just under a year of writing 4 hours a week. One of the surprising things for me is I felt pretty confident with the material. I had already had hundreds of students who'd gone through Money Wound Medicine. I had thousands of people who had taken the quiz. So it really felt like it was just changing the way that I was going to be taking like a lot of the content from Money Wound Medicine and turning it into a book and weaving my own story into it. But it actually ended up pretty materially different. There was a lot more that wanted to come through the book. And I actually ended up going back and enhancing the Money Wound Medicine program because of stuff that came through with the book. So I really do believe that when we open up this creative portal and we go into co-creation and kind of the birthing process with Source, we're pleasantly surprised. And often more stuff wants to come through than what we initially anticipated. I made the decision to self-publish my book because I don't really think that traditional publishing houses are bringing as much to the table as they used to. If you think about the way that people used to get book deals, it was like the publishing house took care of all the sales and marketing. So all you had to do was write the book, and they would give you, an advance on your royalties so that you could have a chunk of money to sustain your living while you were writing. And you wrote it, they provided the editors, they did all the publicity, they did the sales and marketing. That's pretty rad. I think that's most people's dream come true. And I think a lot of people still believe that a traditional publishing house does that, and they just don't. So now it's like, they'll still give you an advance on your book royalties, but you got to understand that's in advance. They're not paying you to write the book. They're loaning you money from your royalties. And if you don't sell enough books, you will owe them money. And that does happen. I know people that's happened to. So I didn't want that. I didn't feel like I needed to get paid in advance part of my money in order to sustain my living while I wrote the book. And my understanding is that most publishing houses at this point really expect you to hire your own publicist. So if I'm going to do that, then why give a chunk of the royalties to a publishing house? And I've just seen so many publishers do a bad job on Amazon. And Amazon's where like 90% of books are being sold at this point, let's be honest. And of course, my husband and I have a 7-figure Amazon agency. So I would rather leverage our expertise. Now, we're not experts necessarily in books per se on Amazon, but we understand Amazon pay-per-click. We understand Amazon search engine optimization. And I'd much rather do it myself than have somebody else do it wrong and screw it up. And so my friend who had the horror story of paying the 30 grand and all these problems. So a lot of many authors, maybe even most authors, go through kind of like a syndication. So Ingram Spark is this company that many use, and it's like you sort of upload your book through there, and then they kind of push out your book details to Amazon, to barnesandnoble.com, to walmart.com, to all these different places. Now, the advantage of that, the thing that's really cool, is that all of a sudden your book is available in a lot of places. So it kind of feels like you're everywhere. But there's a big downside, which is that you can't optimize your Amazon listing for your book in the same way because you're not really interfacing with Amazon's interface. You're just putting your stuff into this third party, and then they're sort of pushing the data to Amazon. And that jacks up a lot of things. And my friend who I was mentioning is Canadian, and people in Canada couldn't even buy her book on Amazon.ca. It was just all messed up. And she didn't have her own Amazon account to be able to go in and fix it. So it created way more of a nightmare than it did help anything. And my take is it's like the 80-20 rule. Focus where most of your sales are going to be. So if you think most of your sales are going to be on Amazon, make sure you're doing the best thing for that channel. And then the other channels can be secondary. I'm not opposed to my book being sold on barnesandnoble.com and independent bookstores and all kinds of other places by any means, but I'm not going to make decisions that are going to harm Amazon in order to make my book available those other places. Because again, my mission is to impact thousands, tens of thousands, millions of people, help them heal their money wounds, help them step into more wealth. And so I want this book to be purchased by a lot of people. So I'm going to do that on the platform that's like the world's largest bookstore, right? So that was kind of my main methodology, like my main thought process. And then of course you keep more of the royalties too. So there are a lot of advantages, and none of it's super easy. You're going to have to, fumble your way through what to click on and things like that. But it's not really hard either. And yeah, you can outsource and hire people to help with that. But I'd much rather outsource and have somebody just help me set up my Amazon KDP, which stands for Kindle Direct Publishing, than have them do Ingram Spark and they want to charge me a 5-figure investment. I would so much rather put that money into actual advertising on Amazon so that my book shows up for the keywords that people are searching for, or when they're looking for other similar books, my book gets recommended. That's where I want to put my dollars. The other thing that's good about self-publishing is speed. When you go through a publishing house, it's often going to take a year and a half before your book comes out. And that's after you've done probably a year of legwork to get the publishing deal. So you're probably 2 or 2.5 years in, whereas my book took me less than a year to write, and it ends up being that from when I started writing last July, now we're publishing in September. Could we have done it faster? Yeah. Was I off for most of the summer vacationing? Also, yes. So a lot of the timing was just due to my life, not how many things needed to be done for the book. I also hired a publicist. It's definitely not necessary. And even my publicist admitted, usually publicity doesn't do a whole lot to drive book sales. So it's more of a thought leadership play where you're going to be featured in a lot of media. So it positions you as more of an expert, more of a thought leader. You can use those logos on your website, as seen on this, that, and the other thing. And so I was willing to do that and just kind of roll the dice and see what comes out of it. But if you were really wanting to focus on the things that move the needle the most for book sales, then I would put that money again towards actual pay-per-click advertising, not towards a publicist. So I think those are kind of just some of the fun, behind the scenes about the book that I'm excited to share. Here's the other thing. The bestseller badge, a lot of that has to do with how many books you sell right at launch. So if you've been listening to this podcast for a while, it's very rare, maybe never, that I make a direct request of you, pretty please, I am asking you to please do this. So here's my ask. Go to go.emilywilcox.com/book-waitlist. And we'll put that link in the show notes. go.emilywilcox.com/book-waitlist. Get on the waitlist. That way I'll send you an email as soon as the book is launched with a link to buy it on Amazon. I'll tell you all of the special bonuses that I'm giving, and it'll be really fun. You'll get to be a part of this. And I hope that it feels like a movement. And it's not just me and my book, but it's this is a movement and we all get to be a part of it. You get to do your part. anytime my friends write a book, even if I'm not planning on actually reading it for, I'm not like interested in the topic or whatever, I buy the book because it's not very expensive and it means a lot to that author. So it would mean a lot to me if you bought this book, and especially if you bought it right at launch, because that will help me become a #1 best-selling author on Amazon, which is a goal of mine. Of course, if I'm going to write the book, I want to be a #1 best-selling author. So click the link below in the show notes, get on the wait list. That is my ask. And now I would love to read an excerpt of the book to get you excited. So this excerpt is from the introduction. Money is a strange thing. We need it, but we wish we didn't. We want it, but we feel guilty and greedy for our wanting. More is good. Our goal is definitely more than we have now. Unless more becomes too much, because too much would be bad. But too little is also a problem. With too little, we're accused of being lazy and unmotivated. But with too much, we're accused of being greedy or evil. It's no wonder we feel so conflicted about money. When we add a cultural taboo that doesn't allow us to openly process how we feel about money, we have the perfect recipe for undiagnosed, unhealed money wounds. And that's what I'm here to change. Not because I'm a financial expert, a money guru, or want to sell you a timeshare, but because I genuinely believe that putting more money into the hands of people like you is a very good thing for our planet. And whether you're conscious of it or not, what's standing in the way of you having more money is your undiagnosed, unhealed money wounds. Before we dive into exactly what money wounds are and how to heal them, let me say that if you're only here reading this book because you personally want to get rich, I'm so here for that. Women especially struggle to claim their desire for wealth and to prioritize their own needs and wants. So I applaud your willingness to own your desires and take action in accordance with them. My mission is to help all get rich, and in doing so, eradicate survival mode, where people operate out of obligation, necessity, and obedience, where people are much easier targets for manipulation and being taken advantage of. Maslow really nailed the concept with his hierarchy of needs. He understood and taught the rest of us that you can't operate from creativity and passion and potential when all your time and energy is focused on meeting your basic needs for survival. I want women to be able to leave harmful marriages without financial worry. I want anyone who hates their job to feel free to explore a new one. I want to experience a life where everyone on the planet feels safe, accomplished, and able to explore and apply their unique creative gifts. I want it for myself. I want it for my kids. I want it for you. And I want it for us. So yeah, I want you to get rich, build wealth, and self-actualize so we can all benefit from your unique creative gifts. That's my end game. If that sounds ridiculously pie in the sky, then I say, let's just all get rich and find out for ourselves. My money healing journey. This is where I should probably tell you how well-credentialed, researched, and qualified I am. But the truth is, I stumbled into this work by accident without any formal training. I, like most Americans, thought I had a pretty normal relationship with money. My first corporate job came with a salary range and predefined opportunities for annual salary increases. I adopted the belief that my earning potential was dictated by my employer and the job market. And I operated within that system for many years. In those years, my ultimate financial goal was to not have to think about money. I wanted it to be a non-issue, and that I knew there was enough in the account so I didn't have to check on it or worry about it. I was raised in a 2-parent household where we had food in the pantry, clean clothes, and our basic needs met. I carried so much inherent privilege as a middle-class white woman living in the United States. I had so many cards stacked in my favor, and I was still walking around with undiagnosed, unhealed money wounds that I wouldn't discover for many years. In fact, it took me becoming a mother, starting my first business, an e-commerce clothing company, working 3 more years in a corporate job, having another baby, starting another business, a marketing agency, and finally leaving the corporate world before I even began to notice symptoms of my money wounds. Even then, I was quick to brush them aside, assuming they were logical or normal. I mean, doesn't everyone feel anxious when they wire money to an overseas factory to order more inventory? That'll just go away over time as the business continues to grow, right? Isn't it logical to worry you might invest money and not make it back? Doesn't everyone feel like it's hard to make more money? Of course it's hard. That's totally normal. Or so I thought, except one problem. I had the privilege of living in Southern California, and I kept seeing more and more examples of people who didn't seem to think it was hard to make a lot of money. In rural, blue-collar Michigan, where I grew up, sure, everyone seemed to agree money didn't grow on trees. But in SoCal, it kind of seemed like money did grow on trees, and that many people had a money tree factory hidden away somewhere. I desperately wanted money to feel easier for me, not this all-consuming thing I chased and constantly thought about. I couldn't understand how I'd gone from having a steady corporate salary that I spent very little time contemplating to being an entrepreneur with theoretically an uncapped earning potential, and yet feeling more scared about money than ever before, working harder for less than ever before, and thinking it was going to take longer to build wealth than ever before. Granted, I got into the entrepreneurial game to have more time with my babies, not because I thought it was a get-rich-quick scheme, but I had not expected to feel all the money drama so deeply. I began to have the distinct feeling I was the one making it hard. But why? The answer to that question eluded me. But since culturally it was awkward and inappropriate to talk about money and my feelings about money, I didn't know these thoughts and feelings were the symptoms of unhealed money wounds. So I kept my head down and worked hard to build business revenue for several years. I joined a very bro mastermind. Imagine a bunch of guys in their 20s and early 30s, mostly without kids, that are sure they've cracked every code in business, wealth, productivity, team building, culture, and so on. Everyone in the mastermind felt the need to make some significant cash after dropping $24K to get into the program. And nearly all the entrepreneurs there chased $100,000 months as their big goal that they would hustle, grind, and sacrifice themselves to make happen. I got caught up in the excitement and competition of the chase and set my sights on the same goal for my agency. I'd write my goal at the top of my planner page every day, as we were taught to do. And I broke down the goal into all the actions I would take to make it happen. I felt tons of self-inflicted pressure, and I was in a constant state of lack and scarcity. I was hyper aware of any areas where I felt there wasn't enough, not enough time, not enough clients, not enough ad spend, etc. It took what felt like forever. But finally, after nearly a year of pursuing the goal, my business had its first $100,000 cash month. Mentally, I had prepared for this huge celebratory moment, thinking the pressure would be off and I'd feel the relief of having made it. Imagine my surprise when, instead, I found myself avoiding a celebration and wanting to throw myself into more work. I knew enough about mindset to get curious about what was really going on. I forced myself to slow down enough to feel my feelings, and what I felt was anxious and unsettled. My mind immediately wanted to know whether or not we could do it again the next month and the next, and if so, how. I thought $100,000 months would bring so much safety and security. I thought I'd feel successful, and frankly, I thought I'd feel rich, but I didn't feel safe. I didn't feel secure. I didn't feel successful, and I didn't feel rich, and I didn't feel like celebrating. For the first time, I didn't simply move the goalposts. I didn't say, well, it's just that 100,000 isn't enough, and I bet I'll feel great once I hit 250K. I could finally see so clearly how I'd been consumed by the chase, thinking the money would make me feel something that it couldn't possibly. But if money couldn't make me feel safe, secure, successful, and rich, what could? My quest to answer that question took me places I never could have imagined. Working with coaches and healers, being guided through deep inner child healing, starting a podcast about money, seeing that podcast become a top 2% globally rated show, interviewing successful business owners and asking deeply personal questions about money, surveying nearly 3,000 people about their money beliefs, developing an entire money wound healing methodology, and launching a coaching business to guide women entrepreneurs on their joyous path to millions, all while bringing in over $8 million in business revenue. I've distilled and compiled the absolute best parts of my quest and the answers I uncovered into this book. You guys are going to be the first to hear part of the book. So I hope you loved that excerpt. And I'm recording an audiobook format right now. So at the time of launch on Tuesday, September 24th, you will have the choice of an ebook, a paperback, or the audiobook. So please share in my excitement. Please get on the wait list so that you're the first to know and can take action early, so that pretty soon we can be celebrating together me hitting #1 best-selling author on Amazon. As always, thank you so much for being here and being a part of the journey, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. Changing the way that we think, feel, and talk about money is up-leveling the planet. I truly believe that. The ripple effect starts with you tuning in, and it spreads when you share this show on Instagram and Facebook. You can tag me at mmakesmoney. And you know what moves the needle the most? Taking just a minute to leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This show isn't free to produce, so let's multiply those dollars invested and help this show reach a bigger audience each week. So thank you in advance for your help. I really appreciate it. And until next time, I'm sending you all the magic money vibes on your joyous path to millions.